Are you a health educator and sometimes you find that when you're giving health advice, it's hard for people to either pay attention or maybe they listen, they like it, but they're not able to actually apply those principles. You follow up with them a week later, a couple weeks later, and then when you hear, hey, how are things going? They're like, oh, I haven't really done it yet. Or and you pour out your heart, your soul into sharing with them everything they need to do in order to get healthier and transform their life, but they're not applying it. Why is that? And other times when you're teaching or you're sharing from stage or on a podcast or an interview and in your content, where a lot of health educators will come to me where they might be able to get quite a bit of views, but they're disappointed with how many success stories they're able to have, people actually applying the principles. So what I'm going to share with you is this framework for teaching frameworks for sharing your ideas and your knowledge in a way that structures it so that people, one, want to pay you, and two, will easily take the advice that you have. There's 4 steps in this. And the way, first of all, what is a framework? A framework is a step-by-step process for getting a repeated result. One of the first things that I do when I coach health educators how to monetize their knowledge online by creating premium coaching programs or premium mentorship programs, as well as presentations. This is one of the most powerful things that you could do, is to create a framework. You see the difference between health educators who are succeeding at some of the highest levels and struggling health educators who never really break through the noise is that successful health educators, they teach through frameworks. They're very structured in the way, in the manner in which they share. In fact, I have a training that on my YouTube channel, I go into detail in this. This is my framework for creating frameworks. This is how I automated my health coaching and doubled my income. If you want to know how to create frameworks, this is the video that you definitely want to check out, because it's going to clarify step by step. This roadmap for helping your clients to get something. Today, what we're going to be talking about is how are you able to share the frameworks once you've delivered it. Now, if you think about a framework, no matter what you're selling, if you want to monetize your knowledge, it's very important for you to be very clear to understand what are you actually selling here. Because at the end of the day, you are selling a transformation. There's a result. Your client is sad. Your ideal client who has money in their hands, that they're willing to part their money, is because they want to go from where they are to where they want to be, and there's a gap. There's a gap and they want to be glad. Maybe it's high blood pressure. Maybe it's facial pain. Maybe it is weight loss. At the end of the day, there's a transformation. You're not getting paid for information. You're getting paid for transformation. So for me, I'm not just teaching people how to speak. I'm teaching people how to get their message to the masses, how to get paid a premium for their health advice. So the transformation is, maybe it's to feel younger, to look younger, to have more energy, to be able to lose weight or anything in that regard, lower their blood pressure, regulate their emotional stress, or get out of pain. There's always some sort of transformation that people are paying for. And in order to create that outcome, this is one of the ways that you could disconnect your income generation from your time, is where you're not selling you're not trading hours for time. It's not about, for you to be able to get paid more, you have to work more, work longer hours, and give more of yourself to people. It's by learning how to get paid for results, not for your time. And the way you get paid for results is that you create a framework. And a framework is a step-by-step process. If you think like, what's the first step to losing weight? Okay, we need to get clear on your why. Why are you going to do that? Here's what's the next step. Let's get your nutrition on board, and then let's figure out an exercise program that you'd actually follow. Or maybe we're going to create some counterintuitive methodology, or maybe you're going to do some detox juicing that's going to be involved. But either way, there's a step-by-step process to be able to get that result. And the problem is, a lot of health educators, when I go to health conferences or events and they're doing presentations, they'll tell you, it's like, you want to eat this type of herb, you want to drink it with this tea, here's a recipe how to put it together, wake up at this hour, this time, do this particular type of exercise, and they go through all these steps in vivid detail. And what happens is it starts overwhelming the audience, and it's harder for them to pay attention. And I used to do that. and I would try to give them everything I possibly could in those 60 minutes or less, but people would walk away and they're not ready to pay because they're like, I already got this big list of things I got to do, so let me go focus on that first. But then I'm like, well, why aren't they buying or investing in the program? So, but everything changed when you start to not just fill them with information, but you structure it with an outcome. And there's different steps here where the steps is really what the process is. This is the process for getting them that transformation. This is the payoff. This is the payoff that they are looking for. And here is the problem that they have before they meet you. In health education, you're not a product pusher, you are a problem solver. And then what you're able to sell is a solution to that problem. And that problem is very painful. They're going through a lot of pain here, and there's a lot of pleasure here when they get to where they want to go. So at the end of the day, it's extremely important that we understand, first of all, what are we actually selling? What does this look like in your communication? And when this is clear in your mind, get very clear on what problem are you solving for them, what is the desired outcome or result that they have, and then create a framework to be able to consistently do it. Now, when you have a framework, this is like 5 steps for like high intensity interval training, or maybe these are like 5 steps for your intermittent fasting, or for the cellular cleansing, or whatever the case is. You're going to create a framework. Once you have a framework, then this is where you start to be able to teach it in a way that people can clarify in their minds. So I attended an event. See, Brendan Burchard was hosting a influencer summit. I paid $3,000 to be able to attend this. And as I was there was like 300 to 600 people. I don't remember how many people, but there's several hundred people who are in this room. And I was like, this is amazing. These are all people who want to monetize their knowledge. And every speaker there was teaching about how to, they all made over $1 million with their best-selling book, with their podcast, with an online course, with their speaking career, or in different avenues that they had made over $1 million. And they were all teaching these concepts. One of the people in the room that I was able to have a conversation with, she said she had joined Brendan Burchard's $25,000 mastermind. I'm like, $25,000, that's quite a bit. I haven't really heard people charging that much for it at the time. And I asked her, okay, so you invest in this mastermind. What's the number one thing? What's the biggest lesson that you think that you got from being in that community? And she said, oh, hands down, it was having a framework. By learning how to have a framework, this simplifies everything in my business. It is so much more clear. My clients get better results. It's easier for me to teach. It's not as heavy of a responsibility for my time, just because I can go through this, get repeatable results. And that was the first time that I was introduced to what this concept of a framework was. And I thought, that's pretty amazing, very interesting. And then I continued in my journey, and I read Expert Secrets, and I started learning from Russell Brunson. And one concept that he shares about frameworks is that the way that he learned about frameworks is he was at a different mastermind with Brendan Burchard, and Brendan Burchard was teaching from a whiteboard, or he was sharing this concept. And what happened was people would ask Brendan some questions, and he would go off and he'd be able to answer their question. And then he's like, okay, where was I? Oh yes, and he'd pick up where he left off. And Russell Brunson was like, how'd you just do that? How'd you do that? And because if someone asked Russell a question and veered off, I mean, it would be a lot harder to get back on track. So he has to be a lot more clear on in specific or scripted on what he's saying. But Brendan was doing this, all of his content is like without notes or without, he's teaching it off the cuff. And it's impromptu speaking is what Brendan Burchard does. And he's reached millions and millions of people in all of his speaking. And what Brendan Burchard told Russell was, oh, the framework is my savior. And what he meant by that is, when you have a framework that you could teach from, then it doesn't really matter where you go or what like deviation or what elaboration you do. You could always trace it back where was I? Oh yes, here's the next step. So when you have a step-by-step process that is repeatable to get a specific result, it becomes so much easier to be able to express your ideas. One, it's more structured. Two, you remember it a lot better. This is how I've been able to give 5-figure speeches without notes. And it's by having a framework, it differentiates you in the marketplace. It makes it easier for your clients to get results and to follow through. So this is where it's really powerful to have this. Habakkuk 2:2 says, write the vision, make it plain upon tables that he may run that readeth it. And this principle of making things plain and clear and simple, and it says that he may run that readeth it, because what happens is when you start teaching with frameworks, it allows your clients to run with your advice, to carry it out, and they'll be singing your songs. You give a handle to your concepts that they can now carry with them wherever they go. Makes it more tangible and easier to conceptualize this knowledge, because at the end of the day, it is, if you want to get paid for your health knowledge, then it's by learning how to structure it in a way that it produces an outcome and gets a result. That's when people pay you, and they come back, they get better testimonials, more success stories, and you could repeat this cycle of value. Does that make sense? Type frameworks in the chat below if you could start seeing the value of frameworks in your health education business. So it's important to know that what we're really selling is a transformation, no matter what it is. At the end of the day, that's why every piece of content needs to solve a problem. Every video needs to solve a problem. Every health talk needs to solve a problem. Every time that you're opening your mouth, you're going to share a solution to a problem. That's how we want to express it. So I'm going to share with you these 4 steps. This is my framework for teaching frameworks. And the video I shared with you before, that's a framework for creating frameworks. Once you create this process, this is how you're going to teach it. So the first thing that I realized is when I first started teaching, and I share these ideas, and these are ideas that I've invested tens of thousands of dollars in learning and trial and error and over a decade of teaching, experiencing, and going through learning the hard way. And then I remember I would just teach these glorious, advanced, amazing concepts, and people would hear and they're just like, okay, and they're not buying, they're not as engaged. But it wasn't until I went into more detail and I started to explain. It's like, do you guys have any idea what is being shared here? And then by being able to pull back the curtains and express, like, I paid this, I went through this event, I traveled across the country to figure this out, and I applied all of these methods. It didn't work, and nothing was working. I did all of these things and been doing it for over 5 years, and I pieced all together, and out of all those tens of thousands of dollars I invested, this is the one idea that has been the most helpful, that will solve that'll make the greatest difference, and I'm giving this to you on a silver platter. Do you get it? And that's when you start seeing it being clicked, and that's when you see that it's making sense for the audience. By being able to share that story of two things. You want to share the story of what is the pain that you experienced before understanding this methodology, and we're talking about your framework. What was the story? What did you go through? Maybe it cost you, maybe like in our, when I'm coaching health educators, what we do is we get really clear on a process. So let's take Dr. Kinjali, for example. Before she came to me, she was struggling to keep her doors open, and she was wondering, like, how can I get paying clients? I want to consistently be able to help people with this, but she wasn't getting the new clients in. So we got really clear on, okay, what is the problem you're going to solve? Well, let's solve weight loss. Okay, what is the process you're going to do to solve that? Your process, or let's say a new way, and your new way is going to be, and she's like, well, I like detox juicing. Okay, so detox juicing is something that she includes in just about everything that she's teaching people about. Somewhere detoxing is a part of that advice. All right, now what I did is I coached her through, and I was helping her see, now, before you learn about detox juicing, what did you do? What is your origin story that you, when you originally learned this process or this concept or this methodology or approach? For you, it might be intermittent fasting, it might be HIIT training, it might be hydrotherapy, it might be some concept. Instead of just blurting out, this is what to do, maybe it was a poultice, maybe it was the power of a plant-based diet, maybe it was a particular herb. Instead of just sharing what it is, start first on what was the story of when you originally learned it. This is your origin story. And when I talk about origin stories, sometimes people are like, well, my origin story goes back 70 years. Or my origin story is back when I was 6 years old. That is not your origin story. Your story, you want to begin your story where your audience is right now when they're hearing you for the first time. That's the beginning. You want to relate to what were you going through when they were when you were in their shoes. And so like detox juicing, we started talking about what did you try in the past. We found like, oh, she tried this CHIP program. She tried, there was like 3 or 4 other different methodologies that she tried that wasn't really getting results until finally she learned about detox juicing from Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead documentary from Joe Cross, and he was able to recover his journey and recover from these deadly diseases that the doctors wrote him off and said, you're done. You're going to be stuck with these the rest of your life. And he reversed them through detox juicing. So she went on this journey and found that she was able to transform her life. So she started sharing with others and they were starting to transform their life. So that's like this origin story of what did she go through? What was all the pain that she experienced that didn't work? And then also you can share the price that you paid. Maybe the price is in expensive surgeries. Maybe they're in a price that you paid in time because you paid attention for learning. Maybe it was the years of experience where you've done it the hard way. And this is where you're able to express either the price of time, of money, of maybe there was some certification you went through, or maybe there was an event that you attended. Even like, as you could see, I'm sharing the origin story that I have with my frameworks. I paid $3,000 to attend an event, and then I learned what was the greatest lesson you learned to this lady who attended a $25,000 event. So now I'm sharing with you the price, and in that experience, it doesn't even have to be something that I didn't pay the $25,000, but I share with you because I'm saying that there's a lady that I spoke to. She paid 25 grand, and when the greatest lesson out of everything that she invested in, what's the biggest aha? It was creating a framework, having a framework that she could teach her and her audience. And so now what I'm doing is I'm sharing with you this $25,000 thing, and now we're condensing it down into one powerful strategy. So even before I tell you what the greatest thing is, you're already invested. You're like, wow, okay, so you paid 3 grand in there, she paid 25 grand. What is the distilled down to the best of the best? And when you hear it, now you're like, oh, it's a framework. Wow, I want to lean in. I want to learn more. So I'm going through this process as I'm teaching you how to create frameworks. I'm sharing with you my origin story of when I originally learned about frameworks. Does that make sense? Type value in the chat if this is starting to make sense to you as you're getting some examples. So I'm leading by example here. So you want to talk about the pain that you experienced when you didn't know how to do what you're teaching the people how to do. That's the first thing. And then the next that you want to do is you want to share the strategy. And what I mean by the strategy, this is where you are this is where you're teaching what? This is what is the concept? What is the methodology? What's the process? You're not going into the little details. It's not the individual steps. This is just an overall strategy of the concepts of what you're actually talking about. So the story is when you're teaching the why. This is why it matters. You gotta make people care, help them to want to listen, because reasons reap results. Without them knowing why should I listen to you, or why should this matter, or why is this relevant to me, you can start sharing the story, your origin story, that and it explains why to pay attention. And this is sometimes called a attention amplifier. It's going to hook people's attention before you even explain what you're saying. You're telling the story that helps them to get on the edge of their seat, where they're like, I need this, I want this is important. And this story of the struggle that you went through in order to experience that. And it's not back when you were 5 years old. This is whenever you didn't know. And I like to think of like, when was a time that I didn't believe? Maybe someone's going through a problem. They have an issue, and I know what the solution is, but instead of just telling them what to do, I think about when was a time that I had the same problem, when was a time when I didn't believe what I currently do, and what was it that introduced me originally to that epiphany, that aha moment where I was like, oh, this is different. So this is where you start structuring your advice, and you tell them that story. You begin where they are currently. And then the strategy is like, this is detox juicing, this is intermittent fasting. And if you tell them you're using intermittent fasting, or maybe it's heavy metal detox, where you're telling them heavy metal detox is the epiphany, is the aha, the new way, the process that really opened your eyes, that solved the pain, that was the result of the price you paid to figure out that heavy metal detoxing is the way to be able to heal and bring the restoration and to get rid of the facial pain. That is the strategy, but you're not going into the minute details of what herbs to take and when to make it and what the amount is and what time of the day. You're not going through the calendar of how to start doing all this detox. You're just explaining the strategy as a concept on a high level view. Does that make sense? This becomes kind of like your framework here, where you may have a framework for detoxing heavy metals, but this is where you're sharing what the deal is. And when you have this, what happens is it becomes very, very clear. Now, the next step that you want to do is where you share the steps. This is where you're teaching the how. This is the individual things. And what I recommend is when you're going through these steps, the steps of your strategy, generally speaking, you want to share in your free content what the concept is, why it matters, and then you monetize the how. You sell the information, but you teach, you give freely the information, but you teach, you sell the implementation. Is that making sense? So, where a lot of times people get very stingy with their ideas, either they're so generous that they try to tell everything, and they think that the more steps that they give, the more value they're giving. But what really happens is people just feel overwhelmed and stressed out. And then other times people go the opposite extreme, where they're like, oh, I don't want to tell them my strategies. I got to keep this to myself, because if I tell them, then they're not going to pay me. Well, that's also going to cause you a lot of challenges as a health educator. But when you share it in the right manner, you're able to tell stories that increase the perceived value of what you're saying, of what the idea is. Then it makes it very clear. So the story is basically showing, hopefully you can see this. Okay. The story is showing all the old ways that you tried, or they will likely try, that's not going to work for them. The strategy is where you're sharing the new way, and the new way of how you are expressing your ideas. So in this context, the old way is just sharing, well, one of them is sharing the steps. You see, when I shared with them all the details, exactly what to do, that old way, it didn't work. People walked away overwhelmed. I thought I was over-delivering, but I was more overwhelming. And so that is the old way. The new way is teaching from a framework, having a framework. And then not just having a framework, before you teach your framework, you share the story of introducing your framework. You can see that there's this old way, new way frame. There's a contrast throughout the entire communication. You're able to do an old way, new way for not only the entire strategy as itself, but you could also do it for the little steps in your framework. But generally speaking, the more you go into the steps, the more overwhelming it's going to be for your clients. So instead, what you want to do is focus on stories, strategies, teach them these concepts, and then when they pay you, after they join your mentorship program, then you go into the details about the steps. But even when you introduce the steps, you still want to share the story behind the step, and then you teach what step number 1 is. And then you go to step number 2, you teach the story, and then the step number 2. So you want to surround every step in stories. You want to learn to surround every statement in stories, every statistic in stories. by learning how to speak in stories. One thing I learned from Dave MacArthur, he's made over $12 million on the back of one signature speech. He's one of the first millionaire mentors of mine. And one thing that he taught me when speaking is that facts tell, stories sell. You want to tell stories specifically because stories help you to dislodge the belief, to undo the belief in all the old ways, the old vehicles that are painful, expensive, that don't work, that are ineffective. And you share with them how you've been where they are. You've tried what they've tried. You've tried doing what they're currently, like the vehicle that they're currently driving to try to get to that result. They currently have a vehicle that they're using, but they're not getting very good success. So what you want to do is you want to show them how to switch vehicles, get to a new way, a new vehicle to get to the destination they desire. And through stories, you're able to express to them how I've been there. I know what it's like. This vehicle left me, Weight Watchers left me stranded on the side of the road. It was unreliable until I found detox juicing. Or I was taking these expensive drugs, or maybe I was taking the high blood pressure, or maybe it was the steroids, or whatever it was, and it was not working. And then I learned how to detox. Then I learned how a plant-based diet. Then I learned some sort of step or strategy. And stories allow you to overcome objections or concerns and fears that people have to following your advice. Where if you don't learn to surround your steps in stories, your strategies in stories, then what's going to happen is people will listen and they'll hear and they'll be like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense intellectually, but you haven't addressed the internal emotional struggle and difficulty that they have with actually following through, so that they're not able to follow through. And then they hear it, but they don't apply your advice. And then I've been frustrated where I'm like, why are they not following through? It's because they are telling a story, a limiting story, a scarcity story in their head about the concept of why they can't do it, of doubts of why it even works, or if it even works, and doubt that they have the time, they have the ability, or all these things. And unless we address that story first, we have to remove their stories, their success stories. We have to remove their scarcity stories so we could replace it with success stories that allow them to apply the new concept, the method, the step that we're sharing with them. Does that make sense? Type make sense in the chat below if this is starting to connect the dots. So this steps, think about this. This is something that generally speaking, you're going to monetize the step. But even now, think about this. I'm sharing this is a free video I'm posting on YouTube, and I'm sharing with you 3 steps in doing this. Now, I'm sharing with you a high-level overview. This is how you can do it, but in our coaching program, we go into more details. There's steps within these, there's frameworks within frameworks that allow you to apply them at higher levels and implement it more with your offer and your context. But I'm sharing with you, this is like the strategy, the overview, not into the nitty-gritties. And I have a story for each step. If you're paying attention, I don't want you to just do what I say. I want you to see how I'm doing it and what I'm doing so that you can get examples and ideas of how you can do this as well. So then the next step here is you want to have social proof. This makes a huge difference where by the time that you're here, you're sharing your story of how you learned or discovered the concept, and people are saying, wow, that makes sense. So they start to believe, okay, that can work. You can do that. But now they're starting to question, can I do that? And is this really something that I could do? They're inspired by you, but they're really wondering, is someone like me can do it? So you want to share social proof of someone who's been able to follow either the strategy you're teaching or the steps that you follow, the similar principles you teach, and they were able to get this outcome, this result that they desire. And social proof could either be from your clients. This is an example of when you do this, this is what's going to happen. And you're showing examples of people who've applied it, and when it happens, this is what will work. Now, there's in my book on high ticket health coaching, there is a whole chapter in here where I talk about there's 3 types of stories that you can share. And I have in here 3 types of stories. And even as I'm sharing with you, 3 types of stories is what? That's a framework. Because I'm sharing with you 3 steps to be able to add social proof in your content. This is something that a lot of people skip. And when they skip it, they don't believe that it's possible for them. They might hear all of your glorious advanced health education, your health knowledge, and all of it can work and totally transform their life. But without the social proof, they're looking for reviews, they're looking for what other people say about your strategies before they actually invest time, money, energy into actually following your advice. So by being able to include these 3 stories, the first one is your personal stories. Now, personal stories are powerful because they show that I've been where you are, right? And that's the type of thing that you want to share up there. The second is that you can share your student success stories. And paying clients are always going to be some of the best because I often talk with health educators that they think that they need to get a certificate, they need to finish their credentials, they need to go get this degree, and that they have to wait months, years before they can get paid a premium for the health advice. But at the end of the day, what people are looking for is they're looking for results. They only care about the results, and like my credentials are the results that I have and the results that I give for my clients. And these, when you help people to solve problems, that's when they believe that your process works. So the social proof, you want to learn. One thing that I learned from Myron Golden, which was very helpful, is you want to become a champion of your student success. If you've given anyone advice, if you've helped someone to be encouraged on their health journey and they've said something good, get it in writing, get their permission. If they're sending you a text message of something that was really helpful, like ask, hey, do you mind if I share this? To inspire other people. But learn to riddle your content in social proof. And here's one of the best tips that I got when I first started as a health educator in my health business. I didn't have the success stories of paying students. What I learned, John Rhodes taught me that until you develop your story, you can use the story of others. Myron Golden says you can borrow. I'm going to say OPS, other people's stories. You can borrow a story to build a story. In business, I want you to get this. Anything you lack in resources, you can always make up in leverage. So what do I mean by that? You can leverage other people's stories. You can leverage other people's credibility. You can leverage other people's kind of concepts. So what you could do is in these stories, and even in the beginning, you could in some ways, you can leverage other people's frameworks. Now, you don't want to steal their frameworks, but you can be a reporter where you could share similar stories or experiences. Like what I was doing today, I was talking about, I attended Brendon Burchard's events, and at his events, I learned the power of frameworks. I'm telling this story. I was reading Expert Secrets from Russell Brunson. I was saying that, well, one thing that Russell Brunson shared is that Brendon Burchard told him that the framework is your savior. And I shared that story. I borrowed his story to build my story. I shared when I was originally introduced to frameworks and when Russell was originally introduced to frameworks. One thing that is so powerful is that you could take on what I call a reporter approach. And when you are able to report on other people's stories, other people's findings or results, you can go through, you can find research that has been published, like the China study, and as one of the largest studies in around human disease that has been done over hundreds of thousands of different people. You can find those credibility, and you can quote the doctors involved. You can quote from doctors. You can quote from their research and some of their works. And the key is you don't want to say, oh, this is my framework, this is what I do and teach. But you're able to quote where you learned these things from. Either the price you paid to learn it from them, or whether it's paying attention, or it's the amount that you paid, or the pain that if you figure this out on your own. So when you're able to report on these lessons, it actually makes you more credible because one, it shows that you are well studied, that you have, even regardless of your certificate, your degree, your education, or what have you, self-education is extremely valuable in today's society. So if you've read books, people go through spend their entire career solving one problem, working with thousands of different people in a variety of different areas, and then they condense decades of experience into days, and then they package it together into a book that now when you're able to grab that book, you could read through it, then it's like being able to have like a doctoral knowledge of this particular topic or area. So if you know more about a subject, then you can teach fourth grader. If you know fourth grade math, you can teach third graders how to do third grade math. That's the concept, where by you being able to quote where you learned these concepts from, it makes your content more credible, because now you could borrow other people's credibility. So when we're doing presentations, let's say I'm talking about mineral deficiency. So now I'm sharing that if you want to overcome, let's say the outcome is going to be stronger bones. We've helped people who are older and their bones are start folding in. They're shrinking, and they want to be able to have stronger, healthier bones. One of the things that we've shared in our signature speech is that we would talk about how Linus Pauling says that every disease is based on a mineral deficiency in the body. We'll talk about how how when you don't have enough minerals from the food that you're eating, then it starts robbing from your bones and organs, and it depletes the mineral density in your organs and your body, so then they start to fold. But when you flood your body with nutrition, it's able to absorb those minerals, then it strengthens your bones. And we've had clients who've actually, like one client, I remember, he's like, I could see the dust on the top of my refrigerator. And what that means is that he used to be all hunched over, and we'll have a photo of him too. He used to be more hunched, and his back was straightening up, and he gained about an inch or two, where now he can start seeing on top of a refrigerator again. So by sharing that social proof, we shared kind of we borrowed from a man with like 48 PhDs, Linus Pauling, and we borrowed a story, we borrowed a statement, a credible statement. We shared why the minerals are, when minerals are depleted, they show up in our body. And we have a social proof of someone who's been able to strengthen their bone density as a result. And we've got several stories of people with stronger bones through our superfood nutrition program. So what that does is it increases the perceived value of what we're sharing. And the strategy is we're talking about mineral dense superfood. When you're able to get the minerals into your body, that's how things start to change. And when we're in a selling environment, we leave out the how. But these are the concepts where people are like, I want that. I want what they have. And actually, Tim, this is a man's name. He listened to another story that we shared of another lady who, over a period of like 8 months, she had a severe arch in her back, and she started straightening out. And we'll tell that story. He's like, I want that. So he joined, and then he became a success story, and we could start sharing his success story, and then it starts to build and grow. You see what I'm saying? So what I'm sharing here is with social proof, don't think that you need to get results before you can have paying clients, because that's not how it works. If the principles you teach work and they're effective, the principles of health, they don't change. They've been the same throughout the ages of the world. The principles of health are still the same. And really, a lot of holistic health educators, you're teaching original medicine. This was the medicine that was given from the Garden of Eden, from the Genesis and beyond. So when you're sharing these concepts, if there are people out there who have been able to recover or improve as a result of sharing similar principles that you teach your clients, you're able to borrow that story to build your story. And as you reference or relate to people who follow similar concepts, then it helps to build belief in what you're sharing with others too. And as you leverage other people's stories, you don't tell them, oh, this is my paying client that they paid me and got this result. You're not saying that. You're saying that they follow the similar principles you teach your clients, and this is the result that they got. And you're showing them the payoff of following that advice. Is this connecting for you guys? Type in OPS in the chat if you're seeing new ways that you can start leveraging other people's stories, because this social proof is huge. you don't have to wait to get all these clients before you start sharing your social proof. Social proof can also come in the form of a Nobel Prize winning researcher. Like for instance, let's say you're going to talk about intermittent fasting. Maybe you want to express this new way, the strategy of what's known as autophagy, where now autophagy is when your body's fasting, it starts recycling these damaged organelles in the cell, and they start repairing and healing the body, and your body starts healing itself. So it's very easy, if you have some sort of fasting involved in your process, you can quote Nobel Prize winning research of the man in 2018 in physiology and medicine. He found he got awarded for this discovery of autophagy, and you could show how this research has been life-changing, how it's been related to many of these chronic diseases. And this is Nobel Prize winning research. So instantly you have borrowed credibility and authority, not because of your background, doesn't have anything to do with your education, past background, students, or paying clients. It has everything to do with this man's background and the price that he paid, the years that he went through. And you're able to introduce this doctor, I forgot his name, but you could research and find that and express, and then now it's easier to be able to build the credibility of someone else that is saying something similar that you teach, that is also endorsing a similar concept of fasting, autophagy, or intermittent fasting, whatever it is, or detox juicing. All of it combines with autophagy. So instead of just going through and teaching people about autophagy, you want to learn to tell the story behind it that helps people say, wow, that's amazing, that makes sense. And even like when I taught it, you can use stories like metaphors where I said it's like it's recycling damaged organelles. You could say, when you drink, when you have some glass bottles of maybe juice or jars, or you have these packages and you could put them in the recycling, they're able to reuse them and repurpose them for more to be, instead of just going to waste and filling landfills, it's able to actually be benefited in a variety of different ways. Well, your body has an internal recycling system. When implemented correctly, it will be able to take these, take the damaged organelles and start repairing them. And every disease can be traced down to damaged cells. Since cells are the foundation of the body, then by helping support the cellular repair, then you're going to be able to help repair any organ that you're referring to, whether it's the circulatory organs, whether it's the eyesight, whether it's the facial pain, or whatever area of the body, they all have cells. So you're able to express that concept, and you're showing it, introducing it as a new way, opposed to the procedures, the surgeries, the drugs, the mainstream advice, or the other competitors who have tried different things, the gadgets, the doodads that people have done for their health that isn't really getting them results. So hopefully this is connecting some dots. What you want to do is share your social proof. Get very clear. People make decisions based on what are other people saying about it. That's why when you go to Amazon, what's one of the first things you do? You go straight down to the reviews. Who has the most reviews? What, if you're thinking about a book, what are the book reviews? And these, or maybe a mentor, a friend recommended you read a book, and you're like, oh, because of that social proof, I'm going to go read the book. We make a lot of decisions based on that. In fact, Robert Cialdini, he wrote the book called Persuasion. He's a world-renowned persuasion expert, and he's a best-selling author, sold millions. One thing he said is that there's 6 points of persuasion. When you learn how to insert those 6 principles of persuasion into your communication, you will be more influential. And one of them is social proof. By seeing other people who are, in a sense, they're like singing your song. They're acquiring the concepts that you're communicating. They also see value in that, and they will believe more in what you're sharing. So we want to get clear on that. If you are doing free content, and let's say you have in your signature speech, you have each teaching point. In every teaching point, you want to share the story of how you originally learned, and here's the teaching point, the concept, the strategy that you're talking about, and then the steps. You're going to leave that out if you're in a free content or selling environment. And then then you're able to share social proof of other people. Because at this point, they're like, yeah, it works. I believe like you can do it. But they're like, but can it work for me? When you start showing other people who are just like them or similar to them, then they start to believe that they can do it too. And this is crucial that a lot of health educators, they just don't teach enough stories in there. When you look at very successful health educators like Barbara O'Neill's, you'll notice a lot of times she will go into an origin story and she'll quote a book or a mentor or a concept or a person that she worked with and how she discovered something worked really well. And then she'll explain what the new way or concept is to introduce and the simple remedies. And then she'll give social proof of someone who went to Misty Springs Mountain or who went to her program or followed her advice and then had this turnaround. And these stories are just, they make things stick. Facts fade, but stories stick. If you want your advice to be sticky in their memory, in their activities, in their answers, then learn to surround every strategy and story and teach from frameworks. When you have a step-by-step framework for all that you do, it makes it so much more simple. It makes your content more desirable than other health educators who just word vomiting all this health knowledge and jargon onto people, and it's going over their head and they're overwhelmed of where to start. By structuring it based on result-based frameworks, outcome-based frameworks, then you're thinking about what am I going to say next, or what am I going to teach about? That becomes a thing of the past. You have an endless amount of content, endless amount of ideas, and in your Lighthouse content, you get to test the material, you get to test the trainings that you're doing, and you're building an inventory of these flagship frameworks that are able to solve problems for people at scale. And the good news is, this becomes very fast, very quick, easier to be able to put together with less time, minimal effort, and you get maximum impact. And people want to continue listening to you because I've given you this golden gift of a framework for teaching frameworks. Whenever you open your mouth, the more that you do this, you will be more persuasive. So what we're going to do is we actually have AI agents that can help you to put together frameworks, to express your ideas in very clear, concise ways on Skills Unlimited. You could take a look at that. And we go live every Tuesday on Zoom. You're welcome to join us. This is live recorded. And we look forward to seeing you. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have more videos like this that will be able to solve problems for you. But until next time, remember that God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Have a great day, and God bless.